So we woke up the next morning in the Kelly Lake campground, and there was actually ash on everything. There was ash on the picnic table, on the bikes, on the tent. And what it was from the forest fire just over the mountain range at Lillooet.
So we woke up at Kelly Lake, fired up another pot of coffee with Hammy's jet boil, invited the Lion hippies over for a cup before we packed up and headed off. And we had already figured out that we were just going to beeline it straight for the island. We had a little bit of gravel first thing in the morning, but after that it was all slab. In fact, most of the day would be the Sea to Sky highway that would run, I think, from Pemberton to Whistler, then again into Vancouver. So we pushed out of the Kelly Lake area towards Pavilion on this really great remote gravel road. It went up to the plateau and then back down again. Grade going up was 14%, the grade going down was 12%. Now we figured we could pretty much make it to Lillooet before we had to stop for breakfast or fuel or anything. So we did stop to take a few pictures before we made it into town. It was when we had stopped to take these few pictures that we had noticed it was getting a little smokier. Now it had been smoky for the last 2 or 3 days, but now it was actually really getting thick. It was when we stopped to take these pictures that you could really notice it. It would be in less than 150 kilometers that we'd find out why it was so smoky.
There was a fairly big fire there that was threatening the community at the time. In fact, they had evacuated the community the day before. If we had followed the highway from Clinton down to try to get to Vancouver, it would have been closed and we wouldn't have been able to get on the highway. But because we'd stayed at Kelly Lake and we were taking this forestry road over the hill and onto the highway at Pavilion, we actually were able to sneak onto the highway and make it south into Lillooet. And as we rolled into Lillooet, we came across a roadblock.
As we pull into Lillooet, we see another Mountie. This one has his car parked across the road and is shaking his head at us. All right, so here we are in Lillooet at Lightfoot Gas, and we just came through the intersection in town, and they asked which way we were heading, and when we told them, towards Whistler or Pemberton, they said, yeah, that was okay. The rest of the town has been evacuated. I don't know if you can see over my shoulder there, but that's the forest fire right there. I'll get a better shot here, and you can maybe hear the choppers in the background, but it's probably just showing up gray. That's the forest fire right there that's forced the evacuation of the town we're in right now. Fortunately for us, we're headed in the right direction, so they're going to let us through. But I think also right now we got to get out of this fire area before they start closing more roads.
We stopped at Lillooet for breakfast at the gas station there. There was a bakery and a gas station, so we stopped and had a coffee and kind of watched the fire creep towards this town. It was kind of eerie and a little bit scary for these people because there's all these people just milling about, that they're at the gas station, their campers are across the street, their campers are parked along the highway and stuff like that. They have nowhere to go. Like, they're just sitting there on the highway across the river from their town waiting for it to burn or not.
So we grabbed some fresh baked breakfast, took a few pictures of the forest fire, fueled up the bikes, and pushed on. The Sea to Sky highway was pretty neat, but it's just a big ribbon of slab. In fact, once you got to the Whistler area, it almost turned into a parking lot. The traffic got so bad. But we really didn't care too much. We were on our way to the island, and so far it looked like most of the forest fires were behind us.
So Hammy, give us a little rundown. Where are we?
We are at Horseshoe Bay at the front of the line to get on the ferry to Vancouver Island. We're going to be landing at Nanaimo and picking up provisions such as rum and pistachios, and then pushing on to Little Qualicum Falls to camp for the evening.
Fan-freaking-tastic. This is the guy right here in the yellow vest that's going to get us on the boat here right away, I hope. So maybe I should put the camera away.
Yeah, so we were on the ferry, we were heading over to Nanaimo, and it was nice to phone up, to turn my phone on and phone up Tony and tell him that we were going to make it to the island after all, and in fact we were already on the ferry.
Now this guy Tony is an old buddy of Hammy's. In fact, Tony and I were both in the wedding party at Hammy's wedding. We were going to meet him on the island. He lives in Courtenay and he rides an old Shadow, really nice old bike. Because our plans had already changed a few times, really all we could tell Tony was that we were on our way to the island. We didn't know where we would end up on the island tonight, but once we figured that out, we'd let him know, and hopefully he'd be able to come out and join us for a little rehydration.
Hey there, I'm Tony, the pilot of the Shadow. Actually an old clunker that I've had for a few years now that gets me by. It's a good old machine. Yeah, anyway, I hooked up with these guys on their big trip 2009. It was a good time.
Just sit right back and you'll hear a tale of a fateful trip that started from...
So we wandered around the ferry for a bit and had a bite to eat, and bought ourselves some stickers and basically just passed the time while we were on our way over to the island.
Almost got a little bit of sushi going on here while we're on the boat.
Yeah, on the coast, eat the fish. Huh?
That's right. And we are out at sea, I guess, kind of. Now we're not sure if this is the guy we saw on the Qualicum highway either, but we saw, geez, how many brown camo Urals with a sidecar can there be? So we think we saw this guy on the highway from Qualicum, but we're not sure, and we haven't been able to find him on the boat here. But a few other bikes there, really nice blue GS over there, and so on and so forth.
We made it into Nanaimo and found a tourist information booth, and basically just picked up some free information and found ourselves a campground guide, booked ourselves a campground, and drove up the island to our campground.
So we had a brilliant ride down the coast highway to Qualicum Beach, where we finally got our campsite. Not the best campsite we had the entire trip. We were sandwiched right between two big land behemoth tour bus style RVs.
So this is our spot for tonight. This is Qualicum Bay Resort. We're wedged between a couple of RVs here, but we got our tent up.
Fortunately, the neighbors, the people in the RVs, were super friendly. We soon had 4 new friends as we sat back and waited for Tony to show.
Tony was able to blast on the coast highway from his home and meet us at Qualicum Beach, and where we were camped that night.
Hey.
Joined by the third, Tony. Let's drink some rum.
So Tony showed up. He was bearing gifts, had a case of beer and some homemade smoked salmon, both of which were delicious. We quickly wrapped up the bottle of rum and the case of beer, and wrapped up our evening goofing around on the beach.
So anyway, that night we kind of tied one on, had a good time.
Basically shared some beers and some rums and some stories, and had a good time.
So now that there were 3 of us, it really didn't take long to go through the beer and rum, but it really didn't matter at all. We were in a beautiful part of the world, hanging out with good friends, having a good time, riding our bikes. Life was good. So after a few drinks on the beach, we decided to call it a night. We'd have a big day the next day. We had to make it out to the west coast of Vancouver Island and the town of Tofino.
Each week, my friends, you're sure to get a smile from 7 stranded castaways here on Gilligan's Island.